The transport ship shuddered as it broke through the atmosphere of Kepler-4 to see. Tom gripped his seat, watching through the small window as the alien landscape came into view. Purple mountains stretched across the horizon, and the suns cast strange shadows on the rocky terrain below. This wasn't Earth, and everyone on the ship knew they were making history. Tom worked as a communications specialist for the Earth Defense Force. His job was simple: keep the radio equipment working and help different species talk to each other. He never imagined he'd be sitting in a spaceship, heading to a planet claimed by 3 different alien races. But here he was, part of the first joint peacekeeping mission in human history. The landing was rough. The pilot, Rodriguez, cursed under his breath as the ship bounced twice before settling on the makeshift landing pad. Through the windows, Tom could see the temporary base that would be home for the next 3 months. It looked like a collection of metal boxes scattered across the purple dirt, with tall walls separating different sections. Captain Williams stood up and addressed the 30 humans aboard. "Listen up, people. This mission is bigger than any of us. We're here to prove that humans can work alongside alien species without starting a war. The planet we're on has enough rare minerals to power Earth's cities for 1,000 years. But 3 different species want it. Our job is to help everyone find a peaceful solution." Tom gathered his equipment bags and followed the others off. The ship, the air tasted different here, thinner than Earth's, with a metallic tang that made his nose wrinkle. The gravity was lighter too, making each step feel like he was bouncing slightly. The base was divided into 3 main sections. The humans got the western part, closest to the landing pad. The eastern section belonged to the Valorians, tall, reptilian warriors known throughout the galaxy for their fighting skills and strict honor code. The northern area housed the Zephyrians, a peaceful blue-skinned species that specialized in trade and diplomacy. Tom set up his tent in the human sector, near the communication array he'd be maintaining. As he worked, he couldn't help but steal glances at the other sections of the base. The Valorians moved with purpose, their massive forms covered in what looked like natural armor plating. Over that, they wore advanced combat suits that made them appear even more intimidating. The Valorian leader was impossible to miss. Commander Zera stood nearly 8 feet tall, her armor gleaming silver and black under the alien suns. She moved through her troops like a force of nature, and even the other species gave her respectful distance during the daily briefings. Tom had studied the Valorians before the mission, but seeing them in person was different. Their society was built around concepts of honor, strength, and warfare. They'd never lost a battle in recorded history, and they wore their victories like badges of honor carved into their very armor. The first week passed quietly. Each species kept to their own areas, meeting only for official diplomatic sessions in the neutral zone at the center of the base. Tom spent his days checking equipment, running diagnostics, and monitoring communications with the fleet orbiting above. The work was routine, but the location made everything feel significant. During the evenings, Tom would sit outside his tent, updating his logs and checking the news feeds from Earth. The entire planet was watching this mission. Success could mean a new era of cooperation and shared resources. Failure could spark the first interstellar war humanity had ever faced. It was during one of these evening sessions that Tom first noticed her watching him. He was reviewing technical manuals when he felt eyes on him. Looking up, he saw Commander Zera standing at the edge of the Valorian sector, maybe 50 meters away. Even at that distance, her presence was commanding. She seemed to be studying him, her head tilted slightly as if trying to solve a puzzle. Their eyes met for just a moment before she turned and walked away, her heavy footsteps echoing across the camp. The next evening, it happened again. Tom was testing the backup communication array when he spotted her at the same position, watching. This time she didn't look away immediately. For several seconds, they regarded each other across the divide between their camps. Then, without a word, she disappeared into the shadows between the prefabricated buildings. "You better be careful," warned Jake, one of the other communications techs. He'd noticed Tom looking toward the Valorian sector. Those warriors are dangerous when something catches their interest. Could be good dangerous. Could be bad, dangerous. Either way, you don't want to find out. Tom nodded, but he couldn't shake his curiosity. What was the most feared commander in the Valorian military finding so interesting about a human tech specialist? The observation pattern continued for several days. Every evening, as Tom worked on his equipment or updated his logs, Commander Zero would appear at the edge of her sector. She never came closer, never spoke, just watched with an intensity that made Tom's skin prickle. Other humans began to notice, too. During mess hall conversations, Tom overheard whispers about the Valorian situation. Some thought it was a security threat. Others wondered if it meant the warriors were planning something. Captain Williams even pulled Tom aside to ask if he had any contact with alien personnel outside of official channels. No, sir, Tom answered. Honestly, but I think their commander is curious about something. Curious is good. Williams replied, curious means they're thinking instead of just fighting. Keep doing whatever you're doing, but stay alert. If she wants to make contact, let her make the first move. As the third week began, the diplomatic talks started showing strain. The Zephyrians wanted to establish mining rights through negotiation and profit sharing. The Valorians believed the planet should belong to whoever could defend it best. The humans proposed a joint colonization effort with shared resources. None of the three proposals were compatible, and tensions were rising. Tom could feel the change in the base's atmosphere. Patrols increased, security protocols became stricter. The easy cooperation of the first weeks was replaced by suspicious glances and careful distance between the different species. But through it all, Commander Zara continued her evening observations. If anything, she seemed more focused, more intent on whatever she was trying to understand about the human operations. Tom found himself looking forward to these silent encounters, wondering what thoughts were going through the mind of the galaxy's most respected warrior. The answer would come sooner than he expected, in a way that would change everything he thought he knew about first contact, diplomacy, and the courage it takes to bridge to different worlds. Little did Tom know that his simple evening routine of maintaining equipment and updating logs was being viewed by alien eyes as something far more significant, a demonstration of human values that would soon reshape the entire mission. 3 weeks into the mission, everything started falling apart. Tom could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. The morning briefings had become cold, formal affairs where each species representative spoke in careful, measured words. The easy cooperation of the first weeks was gone, replaced by suspicious glances and whispered conversations that stopped whenever someone from another species walked by. The diplomatic talks had hit a wall. The Zephyrians accused the Valorians of making secret military preparations. The Valorians claimed the humans were sharing technology with the Zephyrians behind their backs. The humans found evidence that both alien species had been conducting unauthorized surveys of the mineral deposits. Trust was crumbling faster than anyone had expected. Captain Williams called an emergency meeting for all human personnel. His usually calm demeanor showed cracks of stress as he addressed the group. In the main communications tent, "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," he said, his voice tight. "Intelligence suggests that if we don't make serious progress in the next week, this whole mission could collapse. Both alien species are getting pressure from their home governments to take action. We're one incident away from this turning into something none of us want to see." Tom felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alien planet's cool evening air. The idea of the mission failing meant more than just going home empty-handed. It could mean the start of a war that would spread across multiple star systems. That night, Tom found himself working later than usual. The communication array needed a complete diagnostic check, and he wanted to make sure every connection to the orbital fleet was perfect. If things went bad on the surface, they'd need those communications working flawlessly. The base had grown quiet around him. Most personnel had retreated to their quarters after dinner, leaving only the night watch and a few essential staff members on duty. Tom sat outside his tent with his equipment spread across a portable table, running tests under the glow of his work light. The 2 alien suns had set hours ago, leaving the sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. Tom had learned to identify a few of them during his weeks on the planet, but tonight he was to focus on his work to look up at the stars. That's when he heard it, the distinctive sound of Valorian armor moving through the camp. Tom had become familiar with the different sounds of the base over the past weeks. Human boots on metal walkways had a sharp, quick rhythm. Zephyrian footsteps were almost silent, their lightweight build barely registering on the ground. But Valorian armor created a unique sound, a combination of metal plates shifting and heavy footfalls that seemed to vibrate through the ground. What made this different was the direction. The sound was coming from the neutral zone between the camps, an area that was technically open to all species, but rarely used after dark. Security protocols discouraged unnecessary movement between sectors during night hours. Tom looked up from his equipment, scanning the shadows beyond his small circle of light. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then a figure emerged from the darkness between two storage buildings, tall, imposing, and unmistakably Valorian. Commander Zera stepped into the edge of his light, close enough that Tom could see the details of her armor, but far enough away that she could retreat quickly if needed. She stood completely still for several seconds, as if deciding whether to continue forward or disappear back into the shadows. Tom's heart started beating faster. This was the moment he'd been wondering about for weeks. All those evening observations, all those silent stares across the camp, they had been leading to this. Human Tom, she said, her voice carrying a slight accent that made each word sound deliberate and important. Are you alone in your tent? The question hung in the air between them like a bridge that could either connect to worlds or collapse. Under the weight of misunderstanding, Tom realized that his answer could affect more than just this conversation. This was the first time a Valorian commander had approached a human outside of official channels. Protocol said he should report this contact immediately, but something told him that following protocol might destroy whatever opportunity was presenting itself. Yes, he said simply, I'm alone. Commander Zera took another step forward, bringing her fully into his work light, up close. She was even more impressive than she appeared from a distance. Her armor wasn't just protective gear, it was a work of art, covered in intricate patterns that told the story of battles won and honors earned. But what struck Tom most was her eyes. They showed intelligence and curiosity, not the cold calculation he'd expected from a legendary warrior. I have been observing your species during this mission, she said, choosing her words carefully. Your kind puzzles me greatly. She gestured toward his equipment setup, the careful way he'd organized his tools, the methodical approach he took to his work. You show no natural armor. You carry no ceremonial weapons. Your bodies are fragile compared to most species I have encountered. Yet your people command respect among the stars. Your ships travel farther than ours. Your technology accomplishes things that should be impossible. Tom found himself fascinated by her perspective. To human eyes, the Valorians were the impressive ones, stronger, faster, equipped with advanced weapons and seemingly indestructible armor. But she saw humans as the mysterious ones. I wish to understand, she continued. How does a species with such apparent weaknesses achieve such remarkable success? She paused, studying his face in the light of his work lamp. Tom could see that this question genuinely puzzled her, that she'd been thinking about it for weeks. I have a proposal, she said. May I join you? Not as a military commander speaking to an enemy, but as one thinking being trying to understand another. Tom looked around the quiet camp, aware that this conversation was probably being monitored by security sensors from all three species. But something in her tone, something in the way she'd approached him alone and unarmed except for her standard armor, told him this was important. Yes, he said, gesturing to a folding chair across from his work table. Please, sit. As commander, Zera settled her massive frame into the small human chair. Tom realized he was about to have a conversation that could change the course of the entire mission. He just hoped he was smart enough not to mess it up. Commander Zera sat across from Tom, her massive armored form making his portable camping chair creak under the weight. The work light between them cast strange shadows, making the moment feel surreal. Here was the most feared warrior in the galaxy, sitting at a folding table like they were old friends having coffee. "Your people fascinate me," she began, her voice softer than Tom had expected. "In all my years of military service, I have never encountered a species quite like humans." Tom set down his diagnostic tool, giving her his full attention. "What do you mean?" "On my homeworld, strength is everything. We measure worth by how well someone can fight, how much they can endure, how completely they can protect themselves from harm. From childhood, we learn that survival depends on building walls, armor for our bodies, defenses for our minds, barriers between ourselves and anything that might cause weakness." She gestured to her own armor, the polished metal plates that covered her from head to toe. "This armor tells my story. Each piece represents a battle won, an honor earned, a moment when I proved my strength. To remove it in front of another being would be unthinkable." Tom nodded, trying to understand. "But that's not how humans work." "Exactly," Zara said, leaning forward slightly. "I have watched your species for 3 weeks now. You wear thin clothing that offers no protection. You share meals together, laugh together, even argue openly where others can hear. When one of your people makes a mistake, the others help instead of showing dominance. This is completely alien to everything I was taught." She paused, studying Tom's face. "Yesterday, I observed something that troubled me greatly. One of your technicians, the young woman who works on the power systems, she was struggling with a heavy component, instead of allowing her to prove her strength by handling it alone. 3 other humans immediately came to help her. In Valorian society, such assistance would be seen as an insult, implying she was too weak to succeed on her own." Tom smiled slightly. "We call that teamwork. Humans learned a long time ago that we're stronger together than apart." "But how?" Zara asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "How can showing weakness make you stronger?" Tom thought for a moment, trying to find words that would translate across the vast cultural divide between them. "Maybe it's not about showing weakness. Maybe it's about showing trust." He picked up one of his diagnostic tools, a delicate instrument worth more than most people's annual salary. Without hesitation, he handed it to Zara. Her massive armored hands dwarfed the device, and she could have crushed it without effort. "Why did you do that?" she asked, holding the tool carefully. "Because I trust you not to break it," Tom replied. "That trust doesn't make me weak. It makes us both stronger. Because now you know I respect you, and I know you'll respect something that's important to me." Zara stared at the tool in her hands for a long moment. "This is a foreign concept to my people. We earn respect through demonstration of power, not through gestures of vulnerability. But you're here," Tom pointed out. "You left your sector, came to mine, sat down with a human you barely know. That took courage." "Courage?" Zara laughed, a sound like distant thunder. "I am the supreme military commander of the Valorian expedition. I fear nothing." "I didn't say you were afraid," Tom said gently. "I said you were brave. There's a difference. Fear is about avoiding danger. Courage is about doing what's right, even when it's difficult." Something changed in Zara's expression. For just a moment, the legendary warrior facade slipped, and Tom saw something deeper underneath: uncertainty, curiosity, and what looked like loneliness. "You want to know what I find most puzzling about humans," she said quietly. "You find strength in admitting you don't have all the answers. On my world, uncertainty is weakness. Leaders must always appear confident, always know the correct path. But I have watched your Captain Williams in the diplomatic meetings. When he doesn't know something, he says so. When he makes a mistake, he acknowledges it. Yet somehow, this makes the other species trust him more, not less." Tom nodded. "That's because admitting you don't know everything means you're willing to learn. And if you're willing to learn, you're willing to find better solutions." Zara was quiet for several minutes, processing this concept. Finally, she stood up slowly, her armor plates shifting with a metallic whisper. "What I am about to do goes against every tradition of my people," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "In our society, what you are about to see is forbidden, except in circumstances of complete trust or total surrender." Tom watched, confused, as she reached for the clasps on her shoulder armor. "Commander, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She interrupted. If I am to understand your way of thinking, I must experience this vulnerability you speak of. Slowly, deliberately, she began removing pieces of her ceremonial armor. First the shoulder guards, then the chest plates, each piece set aside with reverent care. Tom realized he was witnessing something historic. No human had ever seen a Valorian. Commander removed their armor in a gesture of trust. Underneath the technological armor, she wore a simpler form-fitting suit that revealed her true form. She was still impressive, still obviously powerful. But now Tom could see the individual beneath the warrior legend. Scars crossed her arms and shoulders, evidence of countless battles. But her movements were graceful, almost elegant, without the weight of the heavy armor. This is who I am, she said, her voice vulnerable in a way that made Tom's chest tighten. Not the legend, not the commander, just me. She sat back down, looking somehow smaller despite her still imposing size. My people would consider this the ultimate shame, to show oneself unprotected, to admit that beneath all our armor and weapons, we are simply beings trying to understand our place in the universe. Tom felt the weight of the moment. Thank you, he said simply, for trusting me with this. Your species has shown me something I never knew was possible, Sarah continued. The courage to be open, to seek understanding instead of dominance. I fear my people have forgotten how to do this. As they sat together in the quiet of the alien night, Tom realized that everything was about to change. This conversation, this moment of trust between two very different beings, was going to reshape not just their personal relationship, but potentially the entire future of human-Valorian relations. The question was whether they would be brave enough to see where this new understanding might lead. Word traveled fast in a small base camp. Tom woke up the next morning to find people staring at him. Not openly, but he caught the sideways glances during breakfast. The hushed conversations that stopped when he walked by. Someone had seen Commander Zara at his tent the night before, and now everyone had questions. Captain Williams pulled him aside after the morning briefing. Tom, I need to know what happened last night. Half the base is talking about the Valorian commander visiting your sector. Tom chose his words carefully. She wanted to understand how humans approach problem solving. Sir, we had a conversation about cultural differences. Williams studied his face. That's it? Just talking? Yes, sir. But I think it was important talking. The captain nodded slowly. Keep me informed if she approaches you again. This could be a breakthrough, or it could be a trap. Either way, we need to handle it right. But as the days passed, Tom realized the situation was more complicated than anyone had imagined. Zara continued to visit his tent each evening, and their conversations grew deeper and more personal. She told him about growing up in a society where showing emotion was considered weakness, where children learned to fight before they learned to read. Every day of my life has been about proving I'm strong enough, she said during one of their talks. Strong enough to lead, strong enough to win battles, strong enough to carry the honor of my entire species. But watching your people work together, seeing how you solve problems by sharing ideas instead of competing, it makes me wonder if we've been thinking about strength all wrong. Tom found himself looking forward to these evening conversations. More than anything else in his day, Zara was brilliant, with insights about military strategy and interspecies politics that amazed him. But more than that, she was genuine in a way that he hadn't expected from someone with her reputation. Can I ask you something? Tom said one evening as they sat outside his tent. Why did you choose to talk to me specifically? There are 30 humans on this base, including officers who outrank me. Zara was quiet for a moment, looking up at the alien stars. I monitored your communications logs, she admitted. Not to spy, but to understand how your people think. Most of the humans here focus on completing the mission, following orders, maintaining security. But your messages to the orbital fleet, you wrote about all 3 species with respect. Even when you disagree with our methods, you tried to understand why we do things the way we do. She turned to look at him directly. You see us as people, not just obstacles to overcome or allies to use. That's rare, even among humans. Tom felt a flush of warmth at her words. But their conversation was interrupted by urgent beeping from his communication equipment. Emergency signals were coming from 3 different sources: the orbital fleet, the Zephyrian sector, and Valorian. High Command. As Tom worked to decode the messages, his blood ran cold. Intelligence reports indicated that the Hive Collective, the insectoid species that had originally claimed the planet, was mobilizing a massive fleet. They'd been silent during the diplomatic talks, leading everyone to assume they'd accepted the negotiations. Instead, they'd been preparing for war. "How long do we have?" Zara asked, reading the tactical data over his shoulder. "According to this, their advanced scouts will be here in 72 hours. The main fleet arrives 6 hours after that." Zara stood up abruptly, her warrior instincts taking over. "I must return to my people. We need to prepare defenses." "Wait," Tom said, catching her arm. "What if there's another way? Another way to do what?" "The Hive Collective doesn't negotiate. They take what they want by force. This was always going to end in battle. But what if it doesn't have to be just your people fighting them? What if all 3 species work together?" Zara stared at him. "Humans and Valorians have never fought side by side. Our military doctrines are completely incompatible. Your people rely on technology and tactics. We depend on individual strength and honor in combat." "But that's exactly why it could work," Tom insisted. "Your people are incredible warriors, but they fight as individuals. Humans fight as teams. Combined, we'd be stronger than either species alone." Over the following days, as the base prepared for the incoming attack, Tom watched Zara struggle with an impossible decision. Her government was demanding that she prepare for traditional Valorian warfare: individual combat units, honor-based tactics, and victory through superior strength. But the conversations with Tom had planted a seed of doubt about whether the old ways were always the best ways. The diplomatic situation had completely collapsed. The Zephyrians were evacuating their civilians and preparing to retreat. The humans were setting up defensive positions around their sector. The Valorians were sharpening their weapons and preparing for what they called glorious battle. But during their evening talks, Zara revealed her growing uncertainty. "My commanders expect me to lead a traditional charge when the Hive forces land. It's what Valorians have always done. We meet our enemies head-on, prove our strength through individual combat, and if you lose," Tom asked gently, "then we die with honor. But lately, I find myself wondering if dying with honor is really better than living to protect what matters." Tom could see the internal war playing out behind her eyes. "What matters to you?" "My people. This mission. The idea that maybe different species can find ways to work together instead of just fighting over resources." She paused. "The possibility that there's more to strength than just being able to destroy your enemies." It was then that Tom realized the full weight of what was happening. Zara wasn't just questioning military tactics. She was questioning the fundamental beliefs her entire civilization was built on. And she was doing it because a human communications specialist had shown her a different way of thinking about cooperation and trust. "I have an idea," Tom said carefully, "but it would require you to trust me completely. And it would mean asking your people to fight in a way they've never fought before." Zara looked at him for a long moment. "Tell me," as Tom outlined his plan for a combined human-Valorian defense. He could see the possibilities taking shape in Zara's mind. It was risky, unprecedented, and would require both species to abandon their traditional approaches to warfare. But if it worked, it wouldn't just save the mission. It would prove that cooperation could triumph over individual strength. The question was whether Zara would be brave enough to bet everything on a new way of thinking, and whether Tom's faith in the power of human teamwork would be enough to unite two species that had never fought together before. Time was running out, and soon they would all find out if trust and cooperation were stronger than armor and weapons. The Hive ships appeared in the sky like a dark cloud blotting out the alien suns. Tom watched from the communications center as hundreds of insectoid vessels descended through the atmosphere, their chittering battle cries echoing across the landscape. They'd arrived 18 hours ahead of schedule, catching all 3 species completely off guard. Chaos erupted across the base. Human soldiers scrambled to defensive positions while Valorian warriors roared their battle challenges. The Zephyrians had already evacuated most of their people, leaving behind only a skeleton crew to monitor the situation. All units, this is Captain Williams, came the voice over Tom's radio. Emergency protocols are now in effect. Defend your sectors and prepare for ground assault. But Tom wasn't thinking about defensive positions. He was thinking about the plan he'd discussed with Zara just 2 days earlier, a crazy idea that could either save them all or get everyone killed. The first wave of hive warriors hit the perimeter like a living tsunami. Tom had studied the insectoid species during mission prep, but seeing them in battle was terrifying. They moved with perfect coordination, each individual part of a larger organism that thought and acted as one. Against such unity, the traditional approach of 3 separate species fighting independently would be hopeless. Tom grabbed his portable radio and switched to the Valorian command frequency. Commander Zara, this is Tom. Do you copy? Static filled the channel for several seconds before her voice came through, strained with the sounds of battle in the background. Tom, I cannot talk now. My warriors are engaged with the enemy. That's exactly why I'm calling. Remember what we talked about. It's time. Another pause, longer this time. Tom could hear weapons fire and the distinctive sound of Valorian war cries. You're asking me to abandon everything my people believe in. I'm asking you to save your people by trying something new. The radio went quiet. Tom watched through the communications center window as Valorian warriors charged into battle, each one fighting alone according to their ancient traditions. They were brave, skilled, and incredibly strong. But against the coordinated hive assault, individual heroism wasn't enough. Then something unprecedented happened. Commander Zara's voice boomed across the Valorian communication network, broadcast on all frequencies so every warrior could hear. All Valorian forces. This is your commander. New orders. Remove your ceremonial armor immediately. Tom's heart stopped. He knew what this meant, what she was risking by giving such an order. Commander, came confused voices from multiple Valorian units. Repeat your last order. You heard correctly, Zara replied, her voice carrying absolute authority despite the chaos around her. Remove your ceremonial armor plates. Fight without them. Tom watched in amazement as Valorian warriors across the battlefield began stripping off their decorative armor pieces. To human eyes, it looked like they were making themselves vulnerable. But Tom understood what Zara was really doing. She was demonstrating the ultimate act of trust in front of her own people. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Instead of individual warriors fighting separate battles, the Valorians began moving with new purpose, without the weight of their ceremonial plates. They were faster, more agile. More importantly, they started working together in ways their rigid honor code had never allowed before. All human units. This is Tom in communications. He broadcast on the human frequency. Knowing he was way outside his authority, coordinate with Valorian forces, share equipment, combine tactics, fight as one unit, Captain Williams' voice crackled. Over the radio, Tom, what the hell are you doing? Saving the mission, sir. Trust me on this. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. Human technical specialists began providing real-time tactical data to Valorian warriors. Valorian strength and combat skills protected human engineers as they set up defensive equipment. Instead of 3 separate armies fighting independently, the combined force began moving like a single organism. Tom watched Commander Zara lead a mixed unit of humans and Valorians against a hive's strongpoint. She moved without her ceremonial armor, vulnerable, but somehow more powerful than ever. Her warriors followed her example, abandoning centuries of tradition to embrace a new way of fighting. The hive forces, programmed to fight against predictable enemy tactics, found themselves completely confused by this unprecedented cooperation. Their battle algorithms couldn't adapt to the fluid, creative strategies that emerged when human innovation combined with Valorian strength. As the battle raged, Tom coordinated communications between the mixed units, watching something beautiful and historic unfold. He saw a human medic treating wounded Valorian warriors with the same care she showed her own people. He watched Valorian engineers helping repair human equipment with meticulous precision. Most importantly, he saw fear replaced by trust, suspicion, replaced by cooperation. The turning point came when the Hive launched their final assault. Instead of meeting it with traditional tactics, the combined human-Valorian force did something completely unexpected. They invited the enemy into a carefully prepared trap that used both species' strengths simultaneously. Human technology created invisible barriers and communication networks. Valorian warriors provided the raw combat power needed to hold critical positions. Together, they turned the Hive's greatest strength, their unity, into a weakness by forcing them into situations where rigid thinking couldn't adapt fast enough. When the last Hive ship retreated into orbit, the base fell silent except for the sound of exhausted warriors catching their breath. Tom found Zara sitting on a supply crate, her armor scattered around her feet. She looked tired but somehow more alive than he'd ever seen her. "My government is going to hate this," she said. But she was smiling. "I just threw away 1,000 years of military tradition." "How do you feel about that?" Tom asked, terrified, exhilarated, free. She looked at him with something that might have been wonder. "Your people have a saying, don't they, about the courage to change the things you can?" Tom nodded. "And the wisdom to know the difference." Over the following days, as reports of the unprecedented cooperation reached the home worlds of both species, Tom and Zara found themselves at the center of a revolution in interspecies relations. The successful defense hadn't just saved the mission, it had proven that different species could become stronger by working together rather than simply coexisting. 3 months later, Tom stood in the communications center of a permanent joint base, watching construction crews from both species working side by side to build something that had never existed before, a truly integrated facility where humans and Valorians lived and worked as equals. Zara approached, wearing simple work clothes instead of armor, carrying architectural plans instead of weapons. "The council approved the expansion," she said, spreading the blueprints across his desk. 50 more facilities like this across 12 star systems. Tom smiled, looking at the plans for bases that would house mixed crews, shared technology, and combined command structures. "Think it'll work?" "Ask me in a few years," Zara replied. "But I have a good feeling about it." As they worked together planning the future, Tom reflected on how much had changed since that first evening, when she'd asked if he was alone in his tent. The answer then had been yes. The answer now, looking at the integrated base around them, and the partnership they'd built, was that none of them had to be alone anymore.